Roar! Roar, roar!
Where is it?
Pretty sure we're close by now.
Is this it?
Yes! Oh, hey. I'm William Lloyd Garrison. You may know me from my newspaper, The Liberator. But if not, you should probably write down that I'm an abolitionist. Now, there's a difference between me and your normal anti-slavery supporter. I hate slavery. In fact, I think it's a sin. Any man should not be owned by another man. Also, many abolitionists believe that while slavery was inappropriate, that the slave owners were also hypocrites for using the Bible's teachings to whip their slaves. Abolitionists worked well with each other, no matter what the race or the gender. Unlike anti-slavery, who usually, as soon as the blacks were freed, had prejudice towards them.
What is the peculiar institution?
The peculiar institution is a system of slavery in North America made for economic profit and backed up by social and political views.
Wasn't slavery invented in America?
No, slavery has been around for thousands of years in Africa and ancient Europe.
How did slavery work there?
Slavery was deeply rooted in African society. They served as soldiers, administrators, and even royal advocates. They became slaves either by judicial decree for crimes they had committed or they were captives of war. It was much different than slavery in America because it was not based off of race, and slaves' children did not also become slaves.
But how and why did those slaves come to America?
Slaves were captured in Africa and sent over here to fill the labor shortage in the West World. They came over here on the Middle Passage, and the first slaves to reach the colonies were in 1619 in Jamestown.
What was the Middle Passage?
The Middle Passage was a very traumatic and painful experience. It started when the slaves were captured in Africa and had to go on a march to the barracoons or a fortified beach where they were often branded by the European traders. Many tried to commit suicide on the way. Then they were transported from those beaches to the large slave ships, and then they had a 4 to 8 passage across the Atlantic Ocean. Slaves rebelled about 1/10 of the time on this trip, and 1 in 7 of them died. The trip overall took 6 months.
So where did all the slaves come from?
All the slaves came from Africa, and specifically 3/4 of them came from West Africa.
Once they got to America, where did they go?
They went to 2 different places mainly. They went to the north and the south. And in the north, a majority of them went to the northern seaports, but some went to the northern factories. In the south, they either went to the upper south or the lower south.
What was slavery in the north like?
Northern slaves worked with about 1 or a few other slaves. They worked as artisans, farmhands, personal servants, and more. At the ports, they worked at maritime labor and as dock workers.
And what was it like in the south?
A majority of slaves were in the south, and the majority of the slaves in the south worked on large plantations. In the upper south, like Virginia and Maryland, they grew staple crops like corn and wheat.
What was the slave's daily life like?
An average workday in the summer lasted 14 hours, and in the winter was about 10. However, during harvest, an average day could last up to 18 hours. On the cotton fields, an average slave was supposed to pick 130 to 150 pounds of cotton a day. As well as doing harvest work, slaves also worked as blacksmiths, carpenters, and millers. There were also domestic slaves who worked in the house cooking and cleaning. They were on call 24/7, but since they were closer to the masters, they were subjected to more sexual assault and whippings when their masters were angry.
What did slaves do when they were not working?
Many things. They did extra work like weaving baskets, which they could give to their masters and get extra food or money. They sang and danced and worshiped the Lord. Religion and family was a big part of their daily lives.
Have you heard about all those recent uprisings?
Yeah, which one?
Nat Turner?
Oh, yeah, Nat Turner. I was in Southampton County, Virginia. 1831, he was intelligent, skilled, and determined man. He gathered a crew together and murdered his master's whole family. 55 white men, women, and children dead, with twice as many blacks killed in the aftermath, including himself.
That's absolutely brutal. You can't forget Gabriel Prosser. In Virginia, 1800, literate, enslaved blacksmith, planned a revolt that was only stopped last minute. 25 of his followers captive and hung.
Can't even forget about the 1811 German Coast Uprising either. That was in New Orleans, 1811. Up to 500 slaves led by Charles Deland had to be put down by militias and a detachment of the U.S. Army. 40 black men killed, 20 more executed, and the rest on the run or caught. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, most of these people are much worse than Gabriel, but John Brown is very, very, very high on my list. Yeah, absolutely. Harper's Ferry, Virginia, 1856. Formed a crowd of slaves, freed blacks, and whites to seize the arms and ammunition of the federal arsenal, to arm slaves and move south along the Appalachian Mountains, freeing any slaves they could. Required Robert E. Lee and the U.S. military to stop them.
More and more slaves are getting this idea of freedom in their heads. They keep talking of an underground railroad that heads north, led by a woman named Harriet Tubman. They say she freed 300 slaves in over 19 separate trips. Thousands are attempting to run every year.
Do you think it's true?
What?
That it's underground?
I mean, it's possible.
But how are they going to dig that far of a hole?
Shovels?
What about the tracks?
What do you mean?
I mean the thing the train runs on.
What are you guys talking about?
The Underground Railroad.
You mean the series of safe houses run by white families for black slaves to hide in on their trip from the south to the north for freedom?
What about the tracks?
What tracks?
The houses are underground?
Underground? What are you talking about?
It's an underground railroad. I don't know, man. I think slavery's coming to an end pretty soon.
Yeah, a lot of people are upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine if we were free, Jim. Didn't have to listen to no one. You know, maybe we could really make a living and be happy. Hell, maybe we could even start our own business.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice? But we live in the South, Timothy. Who knows if that'll ever happen?
You never know, Jim.
You think we'll ever be able to save enough money to buy us free?
You know, ain't nobody gonna hire us two Negroes. We'd end up right back where we started.
I just thought if we both, well, never mind. You're right, ain't no one gonna accept us anyways. You know, tomorrow, when we get sold off to the new plantation, I hope we stay together. You're the only family I got.
Me too. Wouldn't be so bad then. But we can't do nothing about it if not.
Well, I guess all we can do is wait for tomorrow.
Good night, Jim.
Good night.
In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed slaves in the Confederate States. The proclamation did not apply to slaveholding border states that were still loyal to the Union. It also didn't apply to rebel states subdued by Union forces prior to its issuance. Nonetheless, it had profound significance. With the Emancipation Proclamation, the struggle between the North and the South transformed into a war to end slavery. Concurrent with the war's end in 1865, the 13th Amendment was ratified. Slavery was declared illegal in every part of the newly restored Union. African Americans across the nation were free. Prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, most blacks who were free had bought their freedom from their plantation owner. Hey, Jim, it's finally happened. We're actually free now. We're free.
Hell, Tim, we both never thought this day was gonna come. We're actually free.
Man, what do we do now? Never been able to choose what I want to do before. Maybe I'll become a shoemaker, even a barber. I could even open up my own shop.
I got it, Tim. I'm gonna get a job doing plastering, or maybe be like you and do some shoemaking.
You're free to go, boys.
Yeah!
Even after the Emancipation Proclamation was passed and the 13th Amendment was ratified, blacks were still treated unequally in public. They would often not be allowed into certain locations, or people would move away from them when they sat down. They still continued to live hard lives, but now they had better rights than before.